Welcome to 45 Forward with host, journalist, and speaker, Ron Rowell. Ron's mission is to make your second half of life even better than your first. Most of us are just approaching our half-life when we reach the mid-40s with many productive years ahead. Ron is here to help prepare us for this kind of longevity by providing vital strategies to shift the traditional waiting for retirement model to a continuous, evolving journey of compelling life chapters. So now, please welcome the host of 45 Forward, Ron Rowell.
Welcome, everyone, to 45 Forward on Bold Brave TV. This is your host, Ron Rowell. Now, I know that March is officially Women's History Month, but on 45 Forward, I want to continue celebrating women today by having a special guest, Diane Curley. Diane is a registered nurse by profession, and she's a dynamic leader in the healthcare field, but she's also a dynamic leader in creating the organization Celebrating Women. The mission of Celebrating Women is to basically elevate the voice and presence and recognize the contributions of women across the planet. So Diane is going to talk about how she built her community. She's also going to talk about how she's been involved and devoted to international volunteer work, providing humanitarian and hope to victims of war, famine, disease, and natural disasters, for which she received an honorary degree. So now I'd like to welcome Diane. Diane, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. A pleasure to be on the show. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So in my introduction, I gave a little bit of a background for you, but and I know that being a registered nurse is, part of your DNA, and it informs a lot of your work. But tell me a little bit about how you got into the field, and what motivated you to begin it, and how it's evolved.
Well, this is a story I don't often tell.
All right.
I was divorced. I was a single mom,
Mm-hmm.
and I needed to work and support my child, who was 8 months at the time when I got divorced.
Wow.
And
Wow.
yes. And the county that I lived in had a program where they would help you go to school, and when it helped you with childcare as well. So when my son was 3, I was accepted into the program, and
Mm-hmm.
I went to school to be an LPN. So I
Mm-hmm.
was first a licensed practical nurse before I
Mm-hmm.
was a registered nurse, and all through the benefit of a program here on Long Island that helped me greatly. And then after I got my LPN, I worked full-time nights and went to school during the day to get my RN. And
Mm-hmm.
then I went back for my bachelor's, and then I went back for my master's. You know how it goes with these lifelong
Yeah,
learners.
absolutely. Absolutely. That's great. I'm always fascinated by these stories, that they're always a little bit by accident, by intention, and you just sort of find it, and it's like it clicks, but it's never quite easy, and it's never quite what you thought it would be. Um,
Right.
but yeah, so and then you got involved. I'm looking at some of your background. You did a lot of work actually during the pandemic, right,
Yeah.
in the field of healthcare field. So tell us a little bit about that, because that was really quite a period, and a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear, and so what was that like? What were you doing during that time?
Y- And you know what? I think it's good to still talk about it, because I think people forget that
Mhm.
thousands of people were dying, you know, weekly,
Right.
maybe more weekly, um, right here in our own communities and as well as all over the world. And it was, I worked at that time as a supervisor at my local hospital,
Mhm.
and the staff were afraid. Um, I wasn't necessarily afraid because I had done mission work all over the world with other, I was in Liberia for the Ebola epidemic, and, I've done work like this before where I had to be fully gowned and masked
Hmm.
in order to take care of
Hmm.
people. So
Right.
it was good because I was able to allay my staff's fears a little bit and make sure they had the resources to do the job.
Hmm. And what was the job actually?
And
What were you involved in doing?
well, when I was at the hospital, I was supervising the staff taking care of the patients, but we closed, every unit was closed. We stopped doing elective surgeries, and every unit was a COVID unit. Every single spot was taken up with
Hmm.
COVID patients.
Right.
And then the nurses were redeployed from their different specialties to assist. And then
Right.
I went to New York City and volunteered in I don't know if you remember the field tent hospitals that were up in Central Park.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, I volunteered there for, gosh, over a month, maybe 2 months. But that was an amazing, amazing experience. And I'm really glad that I became a nurse because I get to use these skills and these gifts to really help people. It made a big difference being in that field tent hospital, taking the burden off of the hospital across the street and treating people with COVID and being there amongst other professionals side by side,
Hmm.
hand to hand, heart and
Hmm.
heart, I like to say, um, during a time where you were either comforting someone who was dying or
Hmm.
comforting the family or providing what we knew then to be the most up to date and best care. And that changed.
Right.
That
Right.
that changed as they got the evidence and the science to support what we were dealing with. This was very early. I think that pandemic started in March, and I was in Central Park Field Tent Hospital all of April.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is important to remember, I mean, we remember things like 9/11.
yeah,
COVID was really traumatic. And we didn't know what was going on. It did take, I know that, well, and we'll get to your international work later to explain to people what you have been doing and continue to do. But so you weren't scared in that sense, but still, it took a lot to really, because no one knew what was going on. People were saying this is not really happening, and then especially I was in not in New York City, but I mean that was certainly an epicenter where people were
yeah.
really struggling. People were in people's bodies were being taken out and put in refrigeration units, and I mean, it was just really a
Right.
tough time. So, what were some, if you can think back a little bit, so what were some of your takeaway from this experience? What did you feel you learned?
Well, I wish some of what we learned we hadn't forgotten so quickly. It was a
Mm,
time when the country really came together, citizens really came together at night when our shift would end at 7 o'clock. We would work 12-hour shifts, but 7 days a week. And when the shift ended and we'd walk out onto the street, the people of the city were banging pots and pans and clapping for us and screaming and shouting. They appreciate us being there for them so much. And we just felt their love and
mm-hmm,
they felt our love. And I
mm-hmm.
think we've forgotten that sometimes, we're still the same people. We're still
Right,
here. We're the ones who survived. And let's
right,
continue that kindness and that love for each other and take care of each other.
right, right. I agree. Yeah, I mean, as a lot of folks know, I wrote this guide called "The Caregiving Navigator" for family
Hmm.
caregivers taking care of their older loved ones. Um, and certainly there is that kind of direct familial care, but there's a greater question that you just raised about how do we care for each other in a greater
Yeah.
sense, and I think that's important. Hey, we're live. It's okay with this life.
The cat and the
um,
dog are
so
playing, and the dog decided to bark. I
yeah, that's great.
apologize.
That's great. That's okay. Not a problem. Not a problem. Yep. So let's now transition a little bit to how you decided to found celebrating women.
Yeah, that happened in 2018, and
Hmm.
I was on social media a lot, and 2018 into 2019, really on social media a lot back then.
Mm-hmm.
And even till today, I would still be on social media, but I got hacked recently. That's another story.
Oh, okay. All
But
right.
I didn't like it was around the Me Too movement, and
Mm-hmm.
other things were going on in our country, and the narrative surrounding women was, uh, quite frankly, unnerved me a great deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, I want to change this conversation. I want to change the way we're talking about women right now. And I want to have women be empowered to be seen and to be heard and to be celebrated for their influence and their impact rather than degraded and demeaned.
Mm-hmm. So that was your inspiration to do that.
That was the impetus. Yeah, I was just like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, that's it. I'm doing something about this. Like whatever
Right.
small thing I could do. I had to
Mm-hmm.
resist. You know what I mean? You have
Yeah.
to resist. Yeah. So that was my form of protest, if you will. I was started writing a blog, and I interviewed
Mm-hmm.
women and shared their stories, and really just amplify our voices and our visibility and celebrate them for the role models that they are. And the tagline
Mm-hmm.
was "Every woman is a role model."
Uh-huh.
So
Uh-huh.
I did that for many years, and then as a blog, and then somebody approached me to do a local cable TV show.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
So
okay.
there we were. Yeah, there we
Mm-hmm.
were on
Mm-hmm.
cable. So it was,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, you launched it as a blog, and so you're a writer, and then you started
yes.
doing other things. You started, but let's talk about just more broadly your mission. So it's basically to, as it just it fosters connection, sparks engagement, inspires
Hmm.
change, enriches
Yeah.
lives, and creates meaningful impact, reshaping how women are presented and recognized.
Hmm.
Um,
Absolutely.
so yeah, so let's talk. So how can we do that better? I mean, let's talk about some of the things you've written about in your blog and ways that you
Yeah.
think that.
I
Mhm,
think that I think that we've gone a little backwards, and I think that it's up to women, to remember what our sisters and our ancestors did for
mhm,
us not that long ago, so that we could have the right to vote and the
mhm,
right to own a home and the right to write a check without our husband's
mhm,
name on it. And all of those things are relatively new rights
mhm,
that we have.
mhm,
And to be, and even the right to work, or be allowed to wear pants. I mean, just they fought so hard to make those changes. And
mhm,
the women today, we need to continue to resist, and we need to continue to fight, not only for to uphold the rights that our sisters fought for, but to continue them, and then also in, preserve them
mhm,
and be able to pass them down to our children when we're not here. So I think it's up
mhm.
to the women of today not to forget and to continue to fight.
Right. Yeah. We're going to take a break shortly, but before we do, I just wanted to emphasize what you're saying, and I realize too that you know what, because of my involvement in writing this caregiving navigator, and one of the things I really work on a lot is what I call successful aging and caregiving, family caregiving,
Hmm.
and that's a field that is dominated by women, and and when I go to these events, I kind of look around and go like, well, why is this? It's well, I mean, I do understand, some of it just historically, women aren't considered
Hmm.
caregivers and they're mothers and I get that. That's important.
Hmm.
Nevertheless, I was one of four sons who took care of my mother and there were no daughters, but we did it and it was important. It was an important experience. So I want to talk a little bit more about that, about the involvement of engagement of men as we come to after the break. So folks, we are going to take a quick break, but we'll be back very shortly with much more from Diane Curley, the founder of Celebrating Women. So don't go away.
Mike Zorich, a 3-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a 6-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2 thirds, and 2 fourths. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorich, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorich has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back, folks. Once again, I'm Ron Roel, the host of 45 Forward on Bold Brave TV. Today, I'm talking with Diane Curley, the founder of Celebrating Women, LLC. And we've been talking before the break about, the issue of men and women, really, in terms of, upholding and the representation of women in terms of what their contributions have been, and I think in some ways changing the narrative about women. And but I was talking before the break about the need, from my perspective, of engaging men more in this conversation, because I think that that's a problem that we haven't really. We haven't really sort of pulled men to the table and said, "Listen, we need to talk about this," um, uh, because I think that you need to be, men need to be involved in the conversation and understand and basically be there and hear the voices, not just women talking with other women. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, first, we had to rally the troops.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We needed women to recognize what was happening and
Right.
that there needed to be some conversation about it. And yes, men can play a role in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
That I think a lot of it is the culture has to change.
Right.
Um, yeah, I think that's the culture of how, men are maybe think that they have to be or should be, but it disempowers women if men have to constantly be so what they consider as masculinity by degrading women or taking rights
Mm-hmm.
away from us. That's a cultural shift that needs to
Right.
happen. Yeah, it would be good if they heard our stories and listened to our stories and championed us.
Mm-hmm.
But until they do,
Mm-hmm.
it's up to us. It's up to the
Yeah.
women. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think we're getting there. I'm certainly, an ally. So I think that
Yeah.
that's starting to happen, and I think that, but that's what in order for women to be elevated, men they do need to change also. And
Hmm.
one of the ways I think is just by hearing your story. So I know that a lot of your mission involves storytelling, and I think that's a very powerful tool. So, talk about the role of stories, because I think sometimes just instead of lecturing people, just hearing people's stories, I think is really effective.
Yeah, and that's what I do in the blog and on the TV show is I talk very little. The women that are on the show,
Mm-hmm.
I interview them and share their story and I gotta tell you, I am usually so inspired by the women that I've written the blog about or that have come on the show. It's been as I thought I was doing it for other women, and it turns out it was also benefiting me. I was feeling
Mm-hmm.
stronger and happier and more fulfilled, knowing that there are women out there doing great things,
Mm-hmm.
and there are male allies out there. Absolutely. My
Mm-hmm.
husband is
Mm-hmm.
one.
Good, good. So, can you give me some examples of some of the stories of women you've had, on your show, and what's some of the things they've done?
Yeah, I had a woman who was blind
Mm-hmm.
and was a teacher in a school for children, even despite, or maybe it even made her better. Who knows? Her what was perceived as a disability,
Mm-hmm.
and her ability to impact others.
Right.
Um, and yeah, so I included, like, the women did not have to apply. Every woman that wanted to be uh, interviewed was interviewed.
Mm-hmm.
Just no celebrities, because it had to be just everyday women, because that's what I wanted to share with the younger generation too. Is
Mm-hmm.
look to us. We are your role models. Maybe not so much look to what's all over social media or
Mm-hmm.
what's in Hollywood. Maybe to look to the woman next door or the woman at the that you meet on the grocery line,
Mm-hmm.
and start those conversation and share those stories and be there for each other.
Mm-hmm.
Want to
Mm-hmm.
set that example for the younger generation as well.
Right. Now, in just reading a little bit about you, I know that part of your storytelling started with your own storytelling to your children. So, talk about the
Right.
role of storytelling with your kids. What sort of stories have you created for them?
Well, I always read to my children since birth. As soon as they were
Mm-hmm.
born, I just was always, and it fosters connection.
Mm-hmm.
Reading together fosters connection, and I want that familial sense for my own children. And I wanted them to have a loving connection and a routine around bedtime, and to just make home a safe place. So I always
Mm-hmm.
read to them since birth. And then when they would maybe a little bit older, like toddlers, and wouldn't fall asleep despite the fact that you just read 10 books, I started
Mm-hmm.
telling them stories.
Uh-huh.
I couldn't read anymore, but I could close my eyes and tell you a story. And that
Mm-hmm.
really worked out well. And then they loved the stories, and they would usually fall asleep after one or two stories.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think it's important for families to read to children, one, for the sake of literacy, um,
Mm-hmm.
to make, up level literacy in the country,
Right.
but also foster those familial, those family connections, that maybe, it's so hard now. Everybody's working or looking for work. Everybody's so busy, but it's really important to take that time out as a family to have a meal, to read a story, to tell a story. It could even be a story about your life when you were younger. My kids love those stories about, because
Uh-huh.
they can't fathom it. They can't picture you as younger, and you're just their mom. So then when you tell a story or two about your early childhood or your teens or 20s, they just love that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it builds connection in the family. And I think that generations ago, they used to do this all the time. And maybe
Right.
we've fallen away from the storytelling. So
Yeah.
one of the stories I wrote, I made into a children's book. I published it in
Oh, okay.
2022. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
very
W-
beautiful.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the story. What it's about.
Well, it's an adventure through the alphabet. And it
Mm-hmm.
tells the stories of how different animals and creatures and bugs play during the day and then how they sleep at night. So,
Mm.
like, the first one is, the ants were playing on the picnic blanket, and now the ants are sleeping. sort of to demonstrate to the children that everybody plays, and I know you want to play, but everybody also sleeps. Look, the ants are now sleeping, even, you know.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I went through the alphabet and I changed it up every night, I would change it to different things.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it was an airplane. You know, the airplane was flying through the sky. Now the airplane is sleeping. But for the sake of the book, I concentrated on live characters.
Right.
And then I also put them in silly situations in the book,
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, a tiger sleeping in a sleeping bag in the forest, you know.
Mm-hmm.
The kids love that because they're like, tigers don't sleep in sleeping bags. They're just so smart, you know, and the connection. I just love it. I love connecting with the kids. So
Right.
that's what I do now is, you know, my youngest is 22, so I'm not reading to him anymore. But all my kids, all three kids are avid readers. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that had to play a part of it. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, they're adults now, and they choose, you know,
Mm-hmm.
they choose to read. But I'm also a
Right.
big proponent of it, you know, reading. You know, when we were kids, I read the back of the cereal box, you know,
Mm-hmm.
or a comic book. It's okay, but just
Mm-hmm.
foster that love of reading so they can carry that into adulthood and pass it on.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of
Go
like a
ahead.
little adventure through the alphabet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nice. A couple things strike me. One is that the power of stories.
Mm,
It's there's something deep in our historical DNA, or just our psyche about storytelling, as you mentioned. So I mean, in old and really primeval times, people would sit around a campfire and tell stories.
yeah.
But I think it's a really powerful tool that we don't think about. But and I even when you're listening to somebody give a speech or something, you're sort of listening, and then they say, "Well, let me tell you a story about this," and all of a sudden
Exactly.
you're you perk up and you're ready for it. There's something about it that it brings out the real humanity in you, and there's a lesson behind it. It's not didactic in the sense of being
Right.
lectured to, so it really is and so doing that, what you're doing with women and just sharing their stories, I think
Hmm.
is a more effective than saying, well, you should treat women better. you know,
Right.
I think it's
I'm setting the example and I'm letting
yeah,
women use their voices and their visibility of how women should be valued and treated. You
right,
know,
right,
I'm using that platform as a way to say, you know, we're not here for your entertainment. You
right,
know, we have we have an impact to make and we're making
right,
it, and we you know, we can't be ignored, whether it's
right.
working, you know, as a nurse or writing a children's book or speaking. I speak all over the country on women's empowerment issues as well.
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, you have to make an impact, and storytelling is a big part of that. And
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned generations ago, right, sitting around the campfire. Well, to this day, I'm still learning new things about my own mother. She will
Hmm.
come up with a story sometime and I'll be like, I never heard that. And
Uh-huh.
it's
Uh,
so important. Like, Mom, I did not know that about you, you know? So I think it's important, yes, to have people tell stories, but maybe we should start asking some questions too, and have, you know, tell me about a time when you were a teenager, Mom. What was that like, you know?
right,
Or
right.
you know, so I have found out really some really interesting stuff about my mom, who's 85 now, that I had
Oh,
never
nice.
known. So I think it's
Mm-hmm.
important. And it goes along with your caregiving
Mm-hmm.
that you write about,
Mm-hmm.
aging and caregiving. Storytelling is so important for people who are caregiving. Um, it helps their memory and
Mm-hmm.
helps them connect. Because sometimes
Mm-hmm.
caregiving, as you know, because you wrote the book, is very, very difficult. So
Right,
if you have
right.
use storytelling as a tool to have a connection with your loved one that you're caring for, maybe take some of the tension out of the moment and connect.
Yeah. Yeah, that absolutely, that connection is so important, and I think that in the latter part of my book, I talk about sense of legacy, right, and
Mm,
that sense of connection in two ways. I think that one, um, people. as you get on in life, and you start thinking, well, what is my legacy? What do I want people to remember about me? Not
Yeah.
just, what my assets are. What do I, give in terms of my
Right.
estate? But what is my mental and emotional estate I'm leaving behind? What do I
Mm.
want my kids to know? And so, when you talk about sharing stories, that's what they'll remember about you. That's what they want to remember.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really important. And I think
Because
that,
stories make you feel. Stories
yeah,
make you feel something. And
right,
like Maya Angelou said, people will not always remember, I'm paraphrasing, what you did or what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel.
right, right.
So
Yeah.
stories do that.
Yeah, there's an emotional resonance, and there's, it makes sense of life. It's you're not just talking, you're making sense of it through a story, and there's a lesson,
Mhm.
and there's an outcome, and I think it's a really important tool. So I'm really glad you're using this, and I know that
Thank you.
you use them frequently in your various events. So let's start talking about more specifically what kinds of events do you have. Let's talk about some of your, I know you have a digital magazine, a podcast, a TV
Hmm.
show, and then you have a planner journal, right? And as well.
Yeah,
So,
this was a wonderful thing that came out of the blog was I
mm-hmm,
captured the women's quotes because one of the questions when I was writing the blog was, what do you want to share
mm-hmm,
to inspire another woman or young girl? So
mm-hmm,
these were then their words of inspiration for the next generation or a woman,
mm-hmm,
of today.
mm-hmm,
So I took the answer to that question and I
mm-hmm.
made a planner journal with 52 weeks of quotes from those women's stories.
I see. Okay.
And then, of course, I added in the days of the week and the month and so you could do that kind of planning in it.
Mm-hmm,
And it
mm-hmm,
included their quotes attributed to them, again, further amplifying their voice and visibility. And then I had, a page for journaling, a page for
mm-hmm,
reflection, a page for planning. So it was
mm-hmm,
quite the labor of love that
mm-hmm.
was.
Yeah, great.
And I'm very proud of that.
Right. Nice. So, again, the time's going quickly, but we need to take another quick break. We're going to sneak one in right now.
All right.
But don't go anywhere, folks. We have a couple more very dynamic sections coming up with Diane Curley, the founder of Celebrating Women.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back, folks. I'm Ron Roel with 45 Forward on Bold Brave TV. We're talking today with Diane Curley, the founder and CEO of Celebrating Women, LLC, a dynamic organization. We were talking a lot about what she does. We're going to continue talking about that. But before we continue, I want to just let you know, tell your friends that if they missed our live show, they can listen to it as a podcast. If they go to Bold Brave TV on YouTube and then find my show, and then I have an archive of all my shows. You can listen to this one as well as my other shows on my playlist. So just click on the 45 Forward playlist. And they can find replays on other platforms as well, like Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, and so forth. So we were talking with Diane about her various events and ways that in which she basically celebrates her mission. We were talking about her planner journal, and tell us a little bit more about other kinds of events and that you're involved with. I know you do a lot of keynote speaking. Anything coming up people
Yes.
should know about?
Oh gosh. Um, there's always stuff going on, but like I wasn't prepared to answer. I'm so
Okay,
sorry. Um,
that's okay.
but yeah, but I do post stuff on the website and on
Okay.
LinkedIn, and I have a lot of friends who hold events too, and we kind of work
Mm-hmm.
together to put stuff
Okay.
together. And that's an important piece of connection too, is networking with other
Mm-hmm.
women, so then you can come together and have events, because you it's not the kind of thing you should do alone.
Right.
It's expensive and time consuming, and you want every detail to be just so wonderful for the
Mm-hmm.
attendees. So do it together with someone. I have my best friend, her name is May, and we collaborate a lot on a lot of
Mm-hmm.
our work. Um, and the events are, I keynote speak at events for, mainly what I talk about is women's empowerment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, having an event where women can come together and
Mm-hmm.
celebrate one another and learn from other speakers, and, you know, enjoy the day together, pouring into themselves and pouring into each other. I think
Mm-hmm.
those events are important, and not frivolous at all. It might be like, oh,
Right.
you're going to have dinner and listen to some speakers, and you'll be gone for a couple of hours. It's important.
Yeah.
It's a big get together
Yes.
like that.
Yeah. So people can find out. So your website is dianecurley.com, right?
Yes.
Yes. So it's
Yeah.
Diane, no period, right? Diane Curley,
Yeah.
CURLEY.com. Okay. So people can go there
Correct.
and find out. They can see your blog
Read the blog,
and
see the TV
hmm
shows. Everything's on there. Connect with me on there. A contact form on there to
right,
connect and continue the conversation and go boldly forward together.
right. Bold, brave TV together. Right.
There you
Okay.
go. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and then now you have a TV show. So, right. That's um,
Yeah, on public access TV, which is
okay.
a beautiful thing. Access TV is available for all of us. And
hmm
you can not only watch the shows, but you can have a show on public
hmm
access TV. And it was a differentiator for me, because a lot of friends, maybe doing a podcast, right, which became very, very popular,
Right.
especially with the advent of COVID and the pandemic. Um, but the TV show was a little bit of a differentiator, and the
hmm
people I interviewed obviously were local from Long Island or the city, whereas my
hmm
blog I could do from all over the world.
Right.
So this was a little more intimate, and they were just thrilled to be on the show. It was a differentiator for our company, for Celebrating Women, the way that we were operating and giving these opportunities for women, just
hmm
like you've given me the opportunity to be on your show. I was giving women the opportunity to be on my TV show, and they would have a viewing party, and it was just a
Mm.
beautiful celebration of them.
hmm
So
Hmm.
It
Yeah.
was very nice. Right now, the show is on hiatus, um, but we're looking to start it up again pretty soon.
Good. Okay. Good. 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 So let's talk a little bit more about your international volunteer work because this is really
Mm.
quite something, a lot of work. So tell me how you got involved with it. I guess part of it, that is, basically, driven by your work in the healthcare field as a nurse. And so tell us some
Yes,
about your experiences.
and by my it's driven by my nursing career, but it's also driven by my faith.
Okay.
And I think, yeah, all of the major faiths teach to love and serve.
Right.
So that's what I was doing. I was living out the mission of my faith, and by loving and serving, and I used my skills as a nurse to do so.
I
It
see.
was like the perfect marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So how I got involved was, there was an organization that was bringing children over, that were going to have some surgeries, and they needed places for them to stay. So my
Mm-hmm.
husband and I thought, well, we could do that. We could have the child stay with us. I'm a nurse. It would be perfect. I, could provide care if needed after the child's surgery. And so we sponsored a child to come over, from Ethiopia. His name
Mm-hmm.
is Seifu. And
Mm-hmm.
after he was with us for a month, and recuperated from his surgery, he went back to Ethiopia. He's an orphan, a true orphan, no parents, and lives in an orphanage with hundreds of other boys.
Wow.
So after he went home, I thought to myself, I'd like to continue to work with this organization because they were doing work at the orphanage. So I did a fundraising event to raise money, and I went with them on their next trip to Ethiopia, where we did a lot of work on the orphanage and bought with our donation money that people had donated, we bought the boys fruit because they very often don't get fruit. They just eat,
Wow.
a special bread and, water, and the
Mm.
water's not even clean. So we would go to the market and buy them mangoes and bananas, and they were just oranges. Oh my God, they just loved it when we came with that. And then I also
Mm.
bought with me reading glasses because the workers at the orphanage didn't have health care, and the women, that were working as the caregivers there, cooking and cleaning, um,
Mm-hmm.
couldn't see. Much like here in America, as you get a little older, you might need a
Mm-hmm.
pair of readers, right?
Right.
I do. So I brought readers over, and with a chart for testing their which, calibration was the right one for them. And
Right.
when they would put on these glasses and be able to read, and then they would cry that they could see again.
Wow.
And
Wow. Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was just so beautiful. Like, such a small thing. I got the glasses um, with my own money from the dollar store. I just went and bought 100 pair of glasses,
Wow.
of
Okay.
different calibrations. And what they said to me through the translator, because they speak Amharic and I speak a little now, but back then none, was that they could read their Bibles again or the Torah again. They could see their spices as they were cooking. They could see how much they were putting in, which they weren't able
Wow.
to do before. Yeah, so small everyday things, can make a really beautiful life. And that made a
Yeah.
difference for them. And that was it. I've been going every year. I used to go 2 to 3 times a year. But then I started doing mission work in other parts of the world as well, and as well as in the United States. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it's been the highlight of my career to do that work,
Mm-hmm.
honestly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I mentioned before, I was in Liberia during the Ebola epidemic. I've been to Greece during the Syrian refugee crisis when they were not allowed to
Mm-hmm.
cross over into Turkey and they were being held in Greece, providing medical care. Zimbabwe, let's see, El Salvador, at our own southern border when, we had a surge in migration. One
Mm-hmm.
of the surges, a group of us went down to help. I don't work alone. I work with organizations that
Yeah.
have
What's the
been,
organization, if you
vetted.
don't mind?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
when I went to Liberia with Ebola, it was, Partners in Health. They're based here in the
Okay.
States, in, Boston, and their leader was Paul Farmer. He's since passed recently, but
Mm-hmm.
last couple of years, but the work still carries on. It's a
Mm-hmm.
great organization. And, they gave us some training. They wanted experienced nurses, but they also
Mm-hmm.
gave us some training specifically to what we're going to be facing over there with Ebola. And the healthcare workers over there were dying. The caregivers were dying from caring
Wow.
for the patients with Ebola. So
Yeah.
it was really difficult time for them. And,
Yeah.
you just have to, you have to come alongside people. That's what Partners in Health does. They don't
Yeah.
come in and push you aside and save the day. They come in alongside you, they accompany you, and together we're going to get through this. And that's
Mm-hmm.
just what we did. Yeah.
Yeah. How long are your stays at these places? Did you say
It
like a week or two
depends.
weeks? Mm-hmm.
Oh no, usually a month, sometimes
Oh,
longer.
nice.
Yeah,
Wow.
you can stay 6 or 8 weeks, even longer. I would
Mm-hmm.
usually I was using my vacation time as a nurse and my sick time all saved up, so I'd go in the spring and I would go in the fall, and
Mm.
um, and I worked for an organization that was very proud and happy to know that that's how I was spending my time. So
Yeah.
I
Wow.
didn't get a hard time trying to get time off to do that work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then one of the other things I did recently was I wanted to start writing about those stories, Ron.
Mm-hmm.
I want to
Mm-hmm.
start writing about the over a decade of mission work all over the world, the different places, the different people, the different poverty,
Mm-hmm.
famine, disease.
Right.
It's everywhere, and
Yeah.
we really can't close our eyes to it. I when we had the hurricane in the Bahamas, I was down in the
Mm-hmm.
Bahamas. Their hospital was wiped out. I went with Samaritan's Purse
Mm-hmm.
and another well-known organization, and we set up a field tent hospital. And because my background was I was an operating room nurse for a while.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I did. I worked in this makeshift operating room in
Yeah.
a tent in the
Yeah.
Bahamas. It was just,
Yeah.
and the people were happy to be cared for, and
Yeah.
they
Great.
gave us so much love in return. So much love.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. So we're going to take our final break, and then we'll come back and do a wrap up, various things, get some of your final closing thoughts. So, folks, don't go away. We have a really nice end piece. So, we're going to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. Come right back.
Dr. RC will share extraordinary resources and services that promote educational success, as well as making a difference in the lives of all social workers, as well as the lives of children, adolescents, and teens of today. She will have open discussions addressing many of the issues that we face about our youth and how being employed in the uniquely skilled profession of social work for over 18 years has taught invaluable lessons through her personal experiences. She will also provide real-life facts, examples, and personal stories that will confirm that why serving as a child advocate is extremely beneficial when addressing the needs of the whole child. Listen live to Dare to Soar, Saturdays, 10 a.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network, and tune in radio as Dr. RC will provide thought-provoking information that will empower, encourage, and strengthen students, families, and communities across our nation. You can also visit her at soarwithkatie.com. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them. Rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies. Find settings that allow them to be the most productive and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBN Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back, folks. This is Ron Roel, the host of 45 Forward on Bold Brave TV. We've been talking today with Diane Curley, the founder of Celebrating Women. Also, before the break, we were talking a lot about her, not only work with women, but her work, her international volunteer work, which is quite impressive, starting in Ethiopia, but then spreading to lots of parts of the world, and for which I understand you got an honorary doctorate in humanitarianism, right?
Yes, that was quite the honor, and I was very
Mm-hmm.
grateful.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking a little bit before about my faith, and one of the things is I thought to myself, when I'm not on this earth anymore, I hope to hear, well done, good and faithful servant. And
Mm-hmm.
with getting this doctorate, this honorary doctorate, because I have my master's degree, was
Mm-hmm.
really a beautiful expression of like right here on earth for
Mm-hmm.
somebody to say, well done, good and faithful servant, right here on earth. So
Yeah.
I'm really honored and humbled by it and grateful for that honor.
Yeah. And, during the break, I just want to tell our audience that we were chatting a bit, and you mentioned, like, well, but most days I'm just an ordinary person. And that's what I think is really impressive about it. And it goes to it's part of your slogan before about with women, like every woman is a role model, but every person
Mhm.
like you don't, you can be quote unquote an extraordinary, ordinary person. I
There
think
you
that's what
go.
you're demonstrating.
Oh,
Right.
well, thank you
Right.
for letting me tell my stories. See, we're back to stories. See how important they are?
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. So we just have a few minutes left. I just thought maybe we can reflect a little bit back on, your thoughts about going, what you've done and perhaps what you might want to do going forward. And any thoughts or anything that we haven't talked about that you want to leave as a closing thought?
Well, I would really like to continue speaking, within the United States and around the world about
Hmm.
different empowerment topics. I enjoy that greatly. I'd
Hmm.
like to do more of that. And I hope to finally write that book about the medical missions. Been saying that for
Yeah, that would be
years.
no, that would be great. I mean, those stories would
Yeah.
be terrific. Yeah, yeah. So do you have a timeline for that? You thinking maybe by next year, you think,
I
or?
I have made that timeline and passed it at least 3 times now. So,
Okay.
well, see, that just shows you I'm just normal, right? It's just
Yeah,
this is
yeah,
just
but
life. We work, the kids, our volunteer work, whatever we're doing,
mhm,
and then sometimes life gets in the way of some of the things you want to do.
yeah, but you're still there. You'll get it done. Just,
Yeah,
at some point you'll figure it out. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Um, so let's see. So once again, we're close to the end of our show. There's much more to talk about, but I just want to thank you for a terrific show. Well, there's always, I'm sure we'll have much more to talk about. Maybe we can come back another time and talk, take a deeper dive in your international work. Because I think it's something that I think is really important, especially now, because, I think we are kind of in a period now of like isolationism, like
Mm,
we're going to cut off and we are connected. So going to your theme of connection, we're connected to the world and what we do matters. And I think people
yes,
really appreciate it. So I think it's important work. We shouldn't just say, well, it's time to just focus on us. Part of us you know, is the world. I mean, that's what for me, the United States is, that we are the world. So, thank you for all your
we
good work.
and it might be cliche to say, but people all over the world are our brothers and sisters,
Hmm.
and we need to love and serve them as they
Right.
can love and serve each other.
Right. Great. I agree. Right. So if people want to contact you, Diane, what's the best way to do that? Is it through email or
Yeah, the
just
best
go to your
way is
website?
through my website, because I have a
Okay.
contact form on the website that they can write to me, ask any questions, reach out. I'd love to
Hmm.
connect. Absolutely.
Right. Okay, great. So before I go, I just want to thank my terrific engineer, Alex, who will guides me through every show. I really appreciate his help. And I want to thank you, the audience, for spending this hour with me, helping us learn and grow together and hear inspiring stories about how all of us can make our journey in the second half of life even better than the first. So join me next Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I'll be talking with Kevin Wade, who is the executive producer and showrunner for the hit TV series Blue Bloods, who recently ended the series, but is on to another adventure as a debut novelist and with a crime thriller, Johnny Careless, which is a terrific book. So, folks, until then, next week, keep moving forward, 45 forward.
This has been 45 Forward with host Ron Roel. Tune in each week as Ron tackles the many aspects of health, finance, family and friends, housing, work, and personal pursuits, all as part of an integrated plan and to take charge of your unretiring life during these uncertain times. Wednesdays, 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network, powered by B2 Studios.